Hello, 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 hello. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me. Um, if you are here, just give me a quick hello, 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 hello. Oh, hi, Billy. No, 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 no skates. Good morning from Canada. Good morning, good morning. Oh, it's so awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited. So this seminar has a lot of information in it. The vast majority of the information is in the slides. So please don't panic if you feel that we're kind of rushing through the slides a little bit, because there's some stuff not on the slides at the end around conflict management that would be really useful to look into as well. And last time I ran over by, I don't know, like 20 minutes when I did this talk. So I'm going to like hit straight on it. If you have any thoughts or questions, or there's something that you would really like to share, please do bang it in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as well as it goes down. So if we start talking about something and you're like, oh my God, this is ringing bells. I'd like to know a little bit more about this particular issue. Please say something. This is for you guys, so we can definitely focus more or less on stuff depending on what you guys want from it. Okay, all good? It's so weird talking into like the open space of the internet. Okay, so dealing with difficult behaviors. The first thing is really to recognize that we are looking at behavior. In this situation. We're not talking about a person or people or their personalities. So whenever we're talking about behavior that might be challenging or difficult or um, problem raising, when we're working in a group of people, we're not talking about that individual being a problem. And it's really important that we recognize that, because we are all capable of having really challenging, really difficult behavior. It doesn't mean that we're shitty people. Oh, disclaimer, I tend to swear a lot. It's not meant with any kind of malice or offense. It seems to be part of my dictionary. I do apologize. I will try not to, but if it slips in there, I'm sorry. So yes, we're not dissecting or criticizing people. We are talking about behaviors that people exhibit when we're under stress, when we're not very well, when we're tired, when we're frustrated, when that part of our brain that thinks about, oh, how can I best convey my thoughts and feelings to this particular group of people shuts down, and we resort to subconsciously, what is the quickest and easiest way I can get what I want? That is what we are talking about here today. Um, Sweet. So I'm just going to skip to the end slide so that you guys know where I'm getting all this from. This is not taken just from the top of my head. This is taken mostly from a book by two behavioral management consultants, the two dicks, Dr. Rick Brinkman, Dr. Rick Karshner. The book of their title is called Dealing with Difficult People, but they break, in that book, they present these 10 types of troublesome behavior. So that is where this is coming from, and that is on the slide at the end if you wanted to go and have a look at it yourself. Um, it's not the be all and end all when it comes to books, but the 10 behaviors are fairly useful way of breaking things down. Okay, so the first behavior type we're going to look at, they all have like super cute names like the tank, or I don't know, I think one of them was called the onion at one stage. I've changed a few. But anyway, so when we're looking at these behaviors, we are looking at people trying to make themselves feel in control or get their own way, but the behavior that they're using isn't one that is conducive for a group. You know, it's not an easy one to work with. So the tank, when the tank thinks that they're right, they'll use all of their strength to openly and aggressively get their own way. More than that, opposing views are not seen as constructive. They're seen as a threat or a personal challenge against them. So the behavior to get things done their way can be from being just outspoken and fairly pushy to outright bullying. Um, I'm definitely capable of this behavior, and fair warning, as we go through these, you may kind of recall situations where you might have been that guy. Don't feel so bad about it. It happens. The first time I started going through this stuff, it was pretty gnarly to realize how much of an absolute dickwad I could be. So it's just fair warning, you might kind of see some of these in some of your behaviors yourself. It's okay. One of the things that I want us to do as a group is, as we go through these behaviors, just try and recall a situation where either you were involved, you witnessed, or this was you. You don't need to share this with us, but when we're talking about this, it's really helpful to have a real life scenario in your head, because then when we're talking about the solutions, you can think about practically how you would do that. And I find that's a really effective way to aid learning, but also when we come to need to use some of these in practice, you've already kind of gone through the process in your head, and it makes it slightly easier to implement. So the tank, that person that is, pushy, aggressive, they think they're right, so they're just going to keep pushing their own agenda until it happens. Just as a quick show of hands on the chat, is anyone familiar with this behavior? Have we dealt with this behavior before? Anyone other than myself going to raise their hand and say, I am capable of this. I'm not proud of it. I'm certainly not, saying it's a good thing, but, at times I've just been that guy that's like, hey, we need to get it done, so we're going to do it my way and we're going to do it now. Management meetings, Billy, no, skates. Yeah. Okay, so a few people saying, yes, this is familiar. Okay, so how best to manage this kind of situation? So the positives, because there are some with tanks, is that they often have very clear and logical arguments. They tend to be keen and enthusiastic to get involved. So, they're usually people that are heavily involved in committee work or leadership roles because they want to help and they want to get stuff done. But the downside to that is that sometimes, or often, they kind of miss some basic points in their thought process. So in their minds, they have this very clear, logical, rational solution to the problem, and they cannot see why other people are not just saying, yes, let's fucking do it. But often there are a couple of key elements that they haven't considered, and they're not able to consider because, again, this is behavior of someone under stress or someone who's feeling out of control. This isn't someone that is sitting ready in a meeting scenario to really listen and share. As difficult as it might be, because not all of us feel particularly comfortable with conflict, this is something that I will talk about at the end. It is essential to stand up to this bulldozing or tank behavior. You don't have to be aggressive, but you need to be assertive in saying, okay, perhaps we should consider this, or I hear your view. That's a really good idea. Have we considered X and Y as part of this? If you find that this behavior is becoming more challenging, more aggressive, pay particular mind to body language. So you don't want to out aggressive them, but you certainly don't want to allow yourself to become small. So you need to maintain eye contact and in particular be at an equal height. So if you're sitting at the desk and they're standing, invite them to sit with you. If they're too amped up and they are not going to sit, as much as it might seem as an act of aggression, it's not in this situation. Allow yourself to stand and say, that's cool. I want to be on a level with you, so I'm going to stand. It doesn't need to be an aggressive thing, but being on a level, both in your body language and in your confidence levels, is important. And that can be particularly difficult if you have an audience, because often when we're dealing with behaviors, we're in some sort of leadership role, normally perhaps in committee meetings or even during coaching situations, and someone's not having a great time, their behavior is affecting everyone else, and people look to us to suddenly know how to manage this. So that is the tank. Are people happy with the flow of this, or would people prefer to have slightly more in terms of realistic, this is a situation I had, or do you want to go through the slides and get through the information? I'm just, a couple of people are typing, so I'm just going to have a little look to see. Okay, so people seem to be okay with this. If anyone does have a particularly good example that they're willing to share, that always brings a good real life scenario into this. Cool. Okay, I am super familiar with this kind of behavior, the sniper, particularly when I've been coaching, particularly when I'm introducing change. Not so much when I'm guest coaching, because I feel that perhaps people are a little more respectful when someone's coming into the league, because you can always ignore what they say afterwards, right? But certainly when I've been coaching my own league, there's often that little voice at the back of that one person that's just out of earshot. I think most of us will be able to relate to this. So this is that person that they love an audience and they'll be at the back of the crowd and they'll be mumbling shit that you can kind of hear but not loud enough for you to challenge publicly. Their attempt to control the situation, or more, I should say, their attempt to derail your authority and your leadership in the situation, is often through snipes, embarrassing comments, trying to humiliate you, trying to make you look stupid in front of other people. Barb's sarcastic comments just out of earshot in the background, which can really affect your confidence as a coach. But it can also, it pisses you off as well, because you can hear it, you know, everyone else can hear it, and you just wish that person would say something so that you could just have that conversation, resolve it, and move on. But often that's not going to happen. There's a reason that this is on the cusp of hearing, and it's often veiled as a very poor joke, because when you do try and challenge it, you'll often get the, I was only joking, get a sense of humor, you know, I'm just having fun, it's fine. It's like, no, you made me feel like shit. Again, just take a moment, have a think about whether as a coach you've experienced this kind of behavior directed towards you or within the group you're in, whether you've witnessed it. Or likewise, if maybe you've been that guy someone's coaching and they're introducing something and you're like, yeah, because that's going to work. I think most of us will have had this kind of experience. Okay, so with this kind of behavior, the key is actually not to have an audience. Don't challenge them in front of everyone, because actually that gives them the audience that they really, really want, and it's going to disrupt whatever meeting or session or situation that you're in, and that is actually achieving their goals. That whatever is going on, they don't want that to happen. They don't want the change. They don't think it's a good idea. Instead of vocalizing that in a proactive way, they're using this behavior to try and derail whatever it is that you're trying to do. So by outwardly confronting them with an audience, they will use that opportunity to continue to disrupt and derail, and you're losing time and you're losing focus. So with this, it is important to take this person to a side. So if it's a training situation, set a drill, set a task, maybe speak to them after the session. Don't leave it too long though. Definitely with all these behaviors, it's really better to challenge as and when, rather than a week later, because a week later people are in a better place and they won't remember what they've done. Often when you confront this kind of behavior, the person is likely to make an excuse. Oh, you know, it was a joke. Don't be so sensitive. You know, we're all here to have fun. That whole like, oh, it's not my problem how you perceive my sense of humor. Yeah, no, it is. It is your problem how your comments are received. That's the thing. So with this person, again, you want to be assertive, but you want to be patient. And let them know that what they're saying is hurtful, and that actually you would want to listen to what they have to say, and you are keen to involve them, and you do want to know what the issues are, but that's not a way that you can't hear their comments on the cusp of earshot. And even if they did intend it as a joke, it clearly signals that there's something that they're not wanting to listen to. So what's going on? You know, what is it that you're not okay with? Let's talk about it. Let's resolve it. Sometimes they'll be happy to do that. Most of the time, they won't talk to you anyway, but it's by challenging them, they're unlikely to use that behavior with you again because it hasn't worked for them. And behavior is a tool that we all use to get what we want in life. That's pretty much all it is. More often than not, you'll hear about these kind of snipey comments from someone else. So you may have a teammate come to you and say, hey, I think you should know that during training, this person was being fairly disrespectful and fairly disruptive. I don't think that you could hear, but these are the comments that they were saying. I think you ought to know. You might want to challenge it, you might not. Often we have good meaning teammates that will let us know if someone is clearly not happy with something or if their behavior is affecting other people. If that third person doesn't want to be in a conversation with you both, often you'll go to the sniper and say, so, hey, I've been told that this is a thing that happened. Can we talk about it? And they'll deny it because they don't want to be challenged. That's not what their behavior is about. Their behavior is about distracting and disrupting. They don't actually want to talk things through with you. But again, the more you challenge this stuff, the more it is unlikely to happen to you again because it's not working for them. Okay. Sorry, I have just seen that Stay Puffed is asked. Sorry if I missed this regarding the tank. Is that assertive discussion still with the group or is an aside convo? I think with the tank that it can be, like if it's a group training session, to have that conversation whilst everyone's waiting to be told what to do is probably just gonna disrupt from the session. But for example, if it was in a committee meeting, it would be appropriate to have that conversation with everyone else. That's fine. Tanks genuinely believe that what they're doing is the right thing, which is why they push it so hard. But often if you can help them to go through the steps and say, so cool, that's not a bad idea based on your logic. Have you considered X and Y? And there's normally some sort of fatal flaw that they haven't considered, which is why people are not as agreeable. Because generally, if someone comes up with a really good idea and everyone's on board, they never need to exhibit that tank behavior because everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense, let's do it. I hope that answers your question. No, that's fine, thank you. But with the sniper, explicitly with this kind of murmuring background behavior, this is not something that you want to challenge in front of people. This is definitely as an aside or in a more private space. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. Let's move on because time freaking flies. Okay, so I will hold my hands in the air and say that fairly recently I've been this guy, which is a horrible thing to admit. But the know-it-alls or the think they know-it-alls, not as aggressive, not as outwardly aggressive as tanks. So not kind of like, do this, but will often use their knowledge or their pseudo knowledge and their confident demeanor to present a really strong argument as to why everyone should be doing what they think you should be doing and almost make it impossible for people to come up with an alternative example without being made to feel stupid. So I'm going to give an example on this, not one that I'm proud of, but you know, if you're going to behave like a dick, you may as well use that behavior as an example of something. So when I was jamming for Team Scotland at the World Cup, I was also in a coaching role, which was a really, really difficult balance. And during the actual World Cup, with all the crowds and adrenaline, I could not maintain the objectivity of a coach and manage and balance that with my wants and desires and adrenaline douchebaggery as a skater. And I remember sitting in a conversation with the captains and the bench crew and talking about the jammer rotation, and they were discussing whether I should be the reserve jammer for a particular game. And my poor, delicate, fragile little ego was like, no, what do you mean? I can't be the sub. And instead of saying, okay, maybe I shouldn't be involved in this conversation because obviously I can't remain objective, dickhead over here starts throwing stats at them about how, you know, like I'm the fucking strongest jammer statistically, and that would be a dick move for da da. So I'm using I mean, we all know stats mean whatever you want them to mean. That's fine. Might have scored points, but probably also got lots of penalties. Is that what we need against this game? You know, using this part of information to justify or to meet the need instead of seeing the whole picture. But by using that kind of knowledge and rationalizing, kind of pushing people into a corner that they had to agree because otherwise it made them look like uh, they weren't being logical, you know, pretty manipulative behavior. So again, not something I'm proud of at all, but a really good example about how you can have someone that's knowledgeable and fairly experienced, but if they're not in a good place, they can use that knowledge and experience to get their own way. Um, and almost push people into a situation where if they disagree, they're made to feel stupid. Billy No Skates just says many announcers suffer from this trait. Like I say, these behaviors we're all capable of them, and we'll go through, and certain things will probably hit home a little bit as to whether you've had to manage that situation or whether you've been that person. And yeah, it's not nice to admit, but we're all human and we make mistakes, and we're all capable of being dickheads. Cool. So to deal with that kind of behavior, it's important that you've done your homework, because know-it-alls are not going to pay attention to the viewpoints or listen to the information being given to them by someone that doesn't seem to know what it is that they're talking about. This is all about ego. It really is. So, you know, that person can say, yes, I absolutely see from the jammer stats that in this game, when we look at the points ratio, you scored the most points. But then actually, if you look at points against, you were in the box 6 times as a jammer, and there were 60% of the points that we suffered were in those jams. So right now we're having a discussion not about whether you're a good jammer, but whether you can be a clean jammer. So you're not, you know, you're giving the other side of the information, which will be more likely to be received and respected. And then that hopefully that person will be like, okay, cool, there's more information that I wasn't considering. Let's play with this, rather than trying to convince someone that thinks that they're right and has some evidence to back up their opinion that they're wrong, because that's not as effective. It's slightly more challenging when you have think they know it alls, people who are super enthusiastic, very convincing, very confident, but actually pretty clueless. Because you don't want to challenge them and undermine them by giving them information that they really should have considered already. But you also, they can be very manipulative and very convincing as well. I think we have another slide here. Here we go. Because what they really want is respect. They want to be respected. You know, you see this with, particularly with new skaters who are capable and confident, and you know, they really want to help and they want to get involved, but perhaps missing fundamental context to some of their ideas, or yeah. And you don't want to challenge them in a way that's like, also, but you're forgetting about X, Y, and Z that we all know about, because that's going to make them feel like crap. And it will hurt them. And you know, when you hurt people, they respond in different ways, but you're likely to have ongoing issues with this person moving forwards. So keeping them on board and basically massaging the ego a wee bit, you know, put forward some more information they might not be aware of, give them an out. It's important that they continue to feel that they're respected, even if they are making some fundamental errors. So, you know, like, oh, that's a really interesting point. I'm not sure if you had access to the information that we had from blah, 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 that might give you a different view. I can give that to you. That's fine. And then we'll have a look at it. So you're kind of giving them an out as to why that's not a good idea without telling them that they've really missed the point. Cool. Are we still with me? It's weird doing all this talking. And I never know if people are like yawn or, oh, this is actually quite interesting. Okay, cool. Okay, so here we have the whiner. I am running slightly behind, so I'm going to blast through this. So this is someone that wants to play a helpless card. Um, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. So they often will use not just their language, but their general demeanor, their body language, everything about them is, oh, nothing is right, everything is wrong. What is the point? See themselves as very powerless and will complain to others, mostly others that aren't in positions to make the change. So, if you're doing a drill, this isn't someone that's going to come to the coach and tell them that everything's shit. They're going to talk to the people that they're on track with and kind of like bring everyone down. Um, and that is a behavior. So for this, I think we need to be really, really clear that we're talking about a behavior. We're not talking about someone who has genuine feelings of helplessness. We're not talking about someone that may be going through a really shitty time in terms of their mental health or be suffering from clinical depression. This is a behavior. And if you're not sure, because we are not, most of us are qualified mental health assessors or psychiatrists, or I should say, none of us should be that person's personal psychiatrist. That would be a bit of a conflict. If you're not sure, assume that this person is having a rough time and be supportive. If you're pretty confident that this person is using this behavior, then challenge the behavior. Um, And Hooks has just said, often people who challenge structures or hierarchies are called out as whiners. This is absolutely not about someone who is appropriately saying the way that this is structured is not good. That someone who is being active in a wrong. This is someone that is placing themselves in a powerless position and actively not seeking to actively work towards change. All these behaviors are fairly subversive. So it's people who, for whatever reason, are not able at that time to proactively say, I don't like this drill, I'm not good at it, and it's affecting my confidence. I'm having a tough time. It's for someone that's like, well, this is shit, it's not working. There's no point tweaking it because we've tried 6 times already and it's still not working. Um, they're not in a problem solving frame of mind. Um, So, with this kind of behavior, it tends to be the general like mindset is that the issue is with everything and everyone else, and it's normally an issue with things that cannot be easily resolved. So it's not necessarily someone that's saying, I can't do this drill because my lace is untied, because then you could quite easily say, well, we'll wait whilst you tie your lace and then we'll carry on. It's more likely to be, oh, I can't do this because, oh, I don't know, the floor is too slippy and I haven't got my spare wheels, or something that's not easily resolved that is a distraction from whatever it is that they don't want to be doing. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, there are a lot of legitimate reasons that people may not be in a place to undertake things, whether it's someone that's in a depressive phase of their mental health and is not able to see the fun anymore. That's a different thing. But likewise, someone that is perhaps recovering from physical injury or has any chronic health issues, if they're saying, okay, I can't do this drill, because actually my knee doesn't bend that way. That's a different thing. And often, as one of those guys with chronic shit, you're always looking to problem solve because you want to do the drill. This is for people that don't want to do the thing and don't really want to problem solve, but are creating problems that are excusing them from the situation. Cool. Okay. Oh, I skipped one. I'm sorry. Um, and again, when we're trying to interact with someone that's in a very kind of meh kind of headspace, one of the things that we are trained to do, and I have to say that I do think that there is a bit of gender coaching here. I feel that people who are raised as women are encouraged more to empathize and collaborate than they are to encourage to assert. Um, so it's often an instinct to someone who may have been raised as female to almost like, oh yeah, that is really terrible, I'm so sorry. But actually, this isn't your responsibility. You haven't created this situation, and it's important not to make that comfortable for them. Like, I'm not saying make people uncomfortable, but when we're trying to help someone out of this phase and into a problem solving phase, justifying their belief that everything else is the problem isn't going to help that. So the best approach that you can take is to positively but assertively interrupt this negative flow. So acknowledge what they're saying, paraphrase what they've said to you. You know, oh, I understand what you're saying. So you feel that your wheels are too slippy for you to complete this drill. Okay, but then try and get them into a problem-solving frame of mind if you can. Okay, so what can we do about that? Do you have any spare wheels? Okay, I might have a set. Do you have bearings? We can change them over. Um, it might take a couple of goes to get them into problem solving and for them to subconsciously realize that their behavior is not getting the desired effect, that they're still being encouraged to do whatever it is that they don't want to do or be involved in whatever they think is crap. I'm using coaching examples, but obviously this can be committee meetings, any kind of context. Um, you're not likely to get them straight into a problem solving frame of mind. You're probably going to get a few, oh, I don't know. That's, like, how am I supposed to know? That's not my job. Um, but persevere. It might affect other people because your attention is being split, but try. Um, Ida is saying, has anyone had these stages where you've done this approach and it just hasn't got through? I mean, I certainly have. I think sometimes you have people that are having a bad day and who genuinely are like, maybe their best attempt at self-care would have been not to come to training. But I think perhaps we will also experience people who this is an ongoing form of behavior. Which is, I mean, these behaviors are not easy to manage. That's why we have slides. Yay. Okay. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds just to talk through, because this seems like it's one that's maybe hitting home a little bit to a few people. Um, it's likely that using direct but open questions will be more successful than giving closed questions. If you have someone that's in a headspace of passivity, of powerlessness, and you're giving them closed questions, you're going to get one word answers. So, be open, be empathetic, but assertive, which can be a difficult balance. But if they know that you're willing to invest in them, they're more likely to work with you. So we've got some really interesting responses coming up here. So we have, in my experience, it comes back to mindset. Doing some developing work on an ongoing basis can really help. And that will tie in with some of the other seminars that have been going on here. I know Maureen Flip has done some really good stuff around skater mentality as well. We have Hooks who's saying several people in their team can get frustrated by their own performance during practice, that they just shut down. I'm not sure that would be a whiner. I think that would come perhaps more under an individual skater psychology in terms of performance anxiety, performance management. Again, there's some really good stuff that's been covered around that as well. I'll see if I can find at the end. Cool. So I'm gonna move on to the no person. Okay, so your no person is an active role. So whereas we're talking about the whiner as someone who is in a kind of passive, helpless kind of headspace, the no person is a much more active behavior. This is more likely to be someone that's perhaps been in the league for a while, or has been involved in the sport for a while, or has been in a leadership position for a while, and has probably invested quite a lot of energy and had maybe some negative experiences. So someone that's kind of lost a lot of enthusiasm, but may actually have a really strong skill set in terms of being active in committee roles and stuff like that. And often their negativity will be based on a bad experience or several bad experiences. So give an example. Oh, wouldn't it be great to have a separate fundraising committee this year because, you know, roller derby is a very expensive thing. We want to make it more inclusive for other people. So let's look at setting up and doing applications for funding, see what we can get. Well, the no person may be saying, I don't think that's a good use of our time. We're a small league. They're very timely. We tried this last year. We wrote to all these people. We got nothing in return. It was a total waste of our time. And we could have used all that time and energy on other fundraising stuff like bag packing or dog walking or whatever. So they're often people that are fairly skilled and experienced, but they've just lost their enthusiasm and their drive and their energy. And that's affecting their behavior, and they're then kind of bringing everyone else down. Oh, I skipped one, I'm sorry. There's not a huge point in directly arguing because they will be able to give you logical and rational reasons and experiences as to why stuff isn't working. So a more effective approach would be to acknowledge their views and ask for those reasons, like allow them the platform to share those experiences, because actually that might help you in preventing certain pitfalls when you're planning as a group. Again, don't try and switch to problem solving or solution too quickly. It's important to make people feel valued. All these behaviors come from a feeling of loss of control or loss of importance. So it's important to make that person feel valued, but also you're encouraging that through healthy discourse, not through the negative behavior. Sometimes asking someone to think about the worst possible situation. So, okay, if we spend, an hour each over the next week coming up with, like funding application pro formas, and we don't get anything, what is the worst thing that happens? Like we've each of us dedicated an hour of our time to no yield. Okay, that sucks, but what is the possible positive outcome? Well, some of the things we're applying for, we could get several £1,000s or euros or dollars worth of funding or equipment. So even if it might be a complete no-go, well, I think it could be worth the expense, even if it doesn't, bringing it back to facts and statistics. Yeah. Cool. The no person isn't, I don't think they're as challenging as some of the other behaviors. I think the next one, the yes person, is actually slightly more difficult to manage. So this is your classic people pleaser. Really, really want everyone to like them, really want to be helpful, but in an attempt to please everyone and make everyone happy, they're just going to agree to everything and they're going to volunteer for everything, and they're so enthusiastic, but as a result, you don't actually ever get to see their real opinion. You don't really ever get to see their thinking or their rationalizing. They just want to be liked. But more so than that, they often bite off way more they can chew, and then they just cannot deliver on everything that they said they're going to do. It's really difficult to get angry with this person because they just want to be liked. And it's quite difficult to manage because they often tie up their feelings of importance and self-value very much with how much they're doing for other people and the feedback they get from other people. So yes, people are often people who for that moment in time are feeling fairly insecure in themselves and feel very much like they need to do more in order to be liked than just being themselves. So it's difficult to manage. because you want to encourage that enthusiasm. You sure as hell don't want to stamp out someone if they're like just so willing to help. And it's really worth taking the time to work through this with someone. Um, because as long as you can help them manage their workload and actually encourage them to interact in a way that allows them the freedom to give their own view, even if that is one that's challenging the norm, then you can have a really awesome team member on your hands. Um, so one of the things that you can do is help them to maintain that feeling of being valued, but ask them to troubleshoot with you. So if someone, if there's a proposal to sign up to a particular charity event, I don't know, I'm thinking of an example, and they're like, yeah, let's do it, it's going to be great. But there's maybe some quite obvious things in the way, like the charity event is a 5K run and it's the weekend before you have a major tournament. Maybe you can help involve them rather than kind of saying, well, actually, I think that's a terrible idea. Yes, let's do something for charity, but not on this date. Help them to troubleshoot with you. Ask them to look at all the potential flaws in this with you so that you can make a really good decision. Chances are they are thinking of all these things. They're thinking, oh God, that's like the week before the tournament, but I don't want to say anything because, someone else thinks it's a good idea and I really want to be their friend. Um, so ask them to be in that role with you, work with them through this. It makes them feel valued, but it also helps them to give a much more balanced perspective. Um, if you're looking at situations like, oh, we need someone to do this, and they are the first person to raise their hand, and I wouldn't outwardly say, no, not you. You've got enough on, because that will hurt their feelings. They'll feel rejected. Um, but you can maybe take the time to message them in advance and say, so, hey, we're going to bring out this job that we want someone to do. I think you would be great at it, but I also have like loads of people that don't yet have their committee point or who aren't doing as much with the league as we'd like them to, and we want to give them the opportunity to get more involved. So if you can, don't volunteer straight away. Not that you wouldn't be great at it, but we want to see who else maybe steps up, because we feel that there's a lot of people that aren't doing as much as they would like. So again, you're not telling this person, we don't want you. You're saying, you're amazing, you're so good at all the things, we really value you. But actually, can you just hang fire, because we kind of want to see what other people like this guy or this guy are going to do, and we want them to be more involved. So it's very much making it about working with you to give opportunities to other people rather than telling this person no, actually, because you say yes to everything and then nothing comes in on time, which might be the truth of it. Cool. Uh, okay. I'm not going to spend forever on this one because it's quite straightforward. Again, this is someone, there's kind of two main types of maybe people. The first is quite similar to the yes person in that they don't want to give their own view or their own opinions. They don't want to offend. They don't want anyone to fall out with them. They're kind of like, oh, I don't know. Well, we could do this, but then this might happen, and then that could be a thing, and kind of get caught up in the ifs and whats of something, and find it very difficult to just give it. Let's do it, because if you do it and it goes wrong, they will feel like they've made a mistake and it's on them, and that everyone will hate them. So with that kind of person, it kind of maybe work with them and kind of say, you have made some really interesting points and considered lots of things. Let's put them in a pros and cons and let's make this decision now. So you're kind of taking the decision together, but acknowledging all the points that they've made. So that's not too difficult to manage. The next one is more of a, I'm trying to think of the word that isn't like super negative, but someone that feels that they are the best person for almost every job, and um, don't really trust other people to do the job as well as them, but can't physically do all the things. So they kind of like half delegate, but then don't really ever get anything done. Um, so they'll say, okay, so we need to apply for funding this year, or we need to renew our insurance. What's the best options for us? I'll delegate to Joe Blogs over there to gather the information, but then the information gets gathered and they're too busy doing everything else or rechecking it or whatever that they missed the deadline or the information's outdated by the time they look at it. And then they're like, oh, I know I should have just done it myself because the stuff that Joe Blogs has given me is useless. Mm-hmm. Um, so for that kind of behavior, when it's someone that really genuinely has issues of letting go of control and wants to do everything, they can be really, really hard workers, tend to bite off more they can chew, and tend to get caught up in doing lots of research and stuff that they don't really need to do. And when they do delegate, they don't delegate successfully, and then they don't come back to the thing on time. So giving them specific deadlines. And if you're the person that they delegated to, checking in with them regularly and saying, okay, so I've got all the insurance information. We have these options for policies. The differences are these, and the deadlines for these is this. And then you can always give a wee nudge. And if they don't come back to you, you know, then you have some fairly reasonable grounds to say, okay, so we're just going to do this because you're not doing it. But it can be slightly difficult to manage because they do think they are the best person for every job and try and do every job and overwork themselves and then can't do anything. Cool. We're on to the last two. Bear with me. Okay, a nothing person. I find I find this kind of behavior really difficult to manage, um, because for me, this person presents as incredibly vulnerable. With they withdraw, so completely, like body language, interaction, everything. They just completely take themselves out of a situation when they're not feeling in control, when they're not feeling comfortable. Whether that is becoming physically absent in a drill, taking themselves to the side, playing with a skate for ages, or going to the bathroom and not coming back, or whether they're there in person but just clearly not engaging. I'm not sure if other people have been paired up or drilling with someone that just, they're not there. They don't want to be there. There's something going on for them, but they're there in body, but certainly not in spirit or mind. And it can be very frustrating to be like, I really want to do the drill. You clearly don't want to do the drill. Why don't you want to do the drill? I can't practice if you don't want to be here. And I don't want to push because you seem to be having a really tough time. But why are you here? You're not here. Um, in order to manage this, you have to get them to talk. They need to engage in some way, and that can be really challenging. If someone is just so shut off, it's really hard to kind of pull them out of that. Breaking the ice with idle chit chat can often work. But if someone continues to be silent, we have to do that really uncomfortable thing where you just let the silence happen. So in the book, it suggests 10 to 15 seconds, which is a really long time. Um, if you count it in your head after this, because we don't have time, it feels like an eternity. But that level of, you're giving a huge amount of space for that person to go through all the cogs in their mind. And Purple Haze is raising a hand saying, I have been this person. Yeah, if if someone is really not in the place where they're interacting, you need to give them that space. So 10 to 15 seconds is what the Dr. Dicks suggest. If there's still no response, be slightly more assertive. Um, Comment on the absurdity of the situation, like, oh, we just want to know if you would like to be the brace, what are your thoughts on that? And then allow some more time. But if there is still no more response and this person is not engaging, as much as it often goes against our instinct, don't continue to give them all your energy to try and bring them out of this. They're not ready for it. There really is nothing you can do further but be direct and say, okay, appreciate you're not ready to give an answer now, but we can continue with the drill without you letting us know if you're going to do it or not. So we're going to carry on, and I need a response with you by the end of this drill in 5 minutes as to whether you're going to participate or not, which might seem a little bit harsh, but actually that person, their behavior is distracting and disrupting everyone around them. And sometimes having someone say, you need to let us know by this date. And if they don't, then I'm sure that there are various code of conducts or policies or whatever that you can refer to say, let's do the thing. But I find this one particularly difficult because my instinct is just to jolly people along, and that's not actually helpful. Okay, this last one, I've witnessed this. I wasn't actually the coach at the time. It's really scary. It's really scary. So the grenade is a very sudden and unexpected outburst. And I mean like toddler temper tantrum scale outburst. This isn't someone that's been having a shit game all game and loses their temper and throws their helmet. This is like really unexpected kind of behavior that goes from seemingly calm to what the fuck. The reason that this behavior is often engaged is because it tends to be super successful. It is really hard to continue with any kind of meeting or training session when you have someone that's exhibiting or has exhibited this kind of behavior. It's incredibly disruptive. In an ideal world, no one would have to deal with it whatsoever, because we would all find more effective ways to manage our shit. In the book, the Dr. Dix comment that they have experienced that more often than not, the behavior of the grenade is often tied in with people that have deeper or more enduring issues around personality or mental health type issues. That doesn't mean that other people don't exhibit this kind of behavior, but often there's so much going on underneath the surface, and that perhaps the patterns for behavior that are rooted in them are not conducive to what is expected within that society. So there is that element to this as well. I think in their book they say there tends to be a certain amount of instability within the personality makeup of people who use grenade behavior. And just as quickly as this flares up, it can be gone. And for them, it's done. Like there is no recourse for this. Whatever happened, and they're so over it. But for everyone else, there is this lasting kind of like, what the fuck just happened? Kind of ongoing behavior. And then people tend to walk on eggshells around this person because they don't want to see that kind of behavior again. That person then starts to feel that they're being treated differently because that actually wasn't their intent, or all their subconscious behavior in this was just whatever was going on made them feel out of control and made them feel vulnerable, and they didn't want it to happen. So this is what they did. And it causes really long lasting difficulties. The only thing that you can do is maintain silent, kind of comforting eye contact and body language. You know, like staring someone down, but you're not looking away and pretending it's not happening. You're like, okay, wait for whatever that blow up is to subside. People do run out of energy, and I'm not meaning to infantilize anyone, but it is kind of like, that 3-year-old toddler screaming and banging, and they run out of energy. When that has subsided, and you may need to physically remove yourself or other people from the space, just, FYI. Tell this person, reassure them that you are keen to know what they want. You want to hear their view, but that is not intelligible. You cannot work with that. Allow some time to talk. So give them options. Coach, you want to go and grab a drink of water with me out in the lobby? Let's go and get some air and talk. So giving them a couple of options, again, probably better away from everyone, because by this time you've probably had quite a lot of distraction in that session, in that coaching session, in that meeting or whatever. But it's a tricky one. And often if the explosion if the behavior exhibited does breach your code of conduct, if it does make other people feel unsafe, irrespective of whether this person may or may not have any other issues going on for them, you must stick to your policies. Consistency and boundaries are super, super important with behavior management. And if you treat one person differently to another person within the same remit, within the same policies, you're creating a really difficult to navigate environment, which feels unsafe for a lot of people. So, you know, if the grenades behavior is shocking, but no one's actually at risk, there isn't been a breach, then work with them. But if they have breached your code of conduct, if they've hit someone, if they've thrown a chair at someone, you have to stick to your policies and follow whatever disciplinary process would follow that kind of behavior. It might seem harsh, particularly if you're aware that person may have other issues, but boundaries and consistency above all. Cool. So there's the references. That's been a lot of information. A lot of it around stuff that is quite difficult. It's, you can sit and talk about, oh, yeah, so if this person does this, you do this. It's really quite hard when you're the person that's expected to kind of have the answers. But I kind of go away and I read this stuff intermittently, or if I know that I'm gonna, like, we've got the AGM this evening, so I'm kind of like reading up on stuff just now in case the shit hits the fan. So you can preempt some situations where you can imagine that there might be more conflict than others. But very quickly, I realize we've got 3 minutes. Also recognize what your own comfort level with conflict is. There's certain styles of handling conflict as well. So one is accommodating, an accommodating style to handling conflict. So I'm just going to read a couple of statements very quickly. So I sometimes sacrifice my own wishes and the wishes of other people. I might try and soothe the other person's feelings just to preserve a positive relationship. I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or try and put stress upon those things. So I'll focus on the things that we do agree on in that conflict. The other person seems to feel more strongly about this than I do, so I'm going to meet their wishes, or putting somebody else's views above those of your own. This is an accommodating response to conflict, which isn't always particularly helpful. There's a couple of others. So there's accommodating, there's avoiding, often developing skills in communication that prevent conflict from ever happening. Letting other people be responsible for solving problems, avoiding unpleasant situations. If someone points out something that you actually find hurtful, just not raising it because you don't want to have to deal with any kind of issue. So be aware of what your own response to conflict is. And when you're looking at managing behavior or being part of a team that's trying to use these tools in difficult situations, just have at the back of your mind, like, okay, I can be hyper aggressive, or I can become too blunt. I mean, for me, I avoid conflict. I'm not very good at it at all, which is why I read about how to deal with it. So I think that's about us for time. I'm just going to check. Although I haven't had a reminder, so that's pretty good for me. Yay! Have people found this information useful? Is there anything that I've touched on that in the dying minutes you would like to quickly talk over? Lots of people saying they found it useful. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Billy No Skate, just a reminder that and then it cuts off. Who knows? Okay, good. Yes, yes. If nothing else, remember you are not responsible for other people's behavior. Even if you are a qualified mental health practitioner, You are not their qualified mental health practitioner. And if you are, that's a very scary blurring of boundaries. Maybe look at that. Um, Even when people are having issues with personality disordered um, type difficulties or mental health issues, behavior is not the same as that person. That person's behavior is not their personality disorder. That person's behavior is not their mental health. And I think often people feel like it's important to accommodate rather than support. So the expectations for boundaries and behavior set down in your code of conduct need to be equally applied for everything and everyone. The thing that you change when someone has additional support needs for whatever reason is you up the support for them. You help them to adhere to that behavior contract. You don't change the behavior contract. So even if someone is going through a really crap time, it's still not okay for them to lose their shit at training and punch someone in the face. Still not okay. What you can do is you can support them to say, okay, so you're having a really rough time right now. Appreciate there's a lot going on. So although you still need to behave in a way that you would be expected to behave at training, we're going to take that into consideration when it comes to team selection and attendance for this period of time, because actually it's more important you look after yourself than focus so much on coming to training. Things like that. You change the support, you do not change the boundaries and the consistency of how they're applied. And someone's just said, at the same time, of course, we're responsible for each other and share problems. We're, yeah, I mean, to be a good teammate, you care about each other and you support each other. But I respectfully disagree that I'm not responsible for the behavior of someone else. I will support them if I can support them, but it's also okay for me to say I'm dealing with my shit right now and I'm not in a position to support someone else. That's also okay. I think it comes down to self-awareness. But I absolutely agree with you, Hooks. We're not saying um, disregard people just because it takes effort, quite the opposite. But this is how hopefully some of these tools will help to direct your efforts in the most meaningful way. Cool. I think I'm supposed to log off now because I'm 3 minutes over. Um, but thank you all so much. The slides should be shared with everyone afterwards. And take care. Big love to you all. Bye.